write-up for the meeting.
Tell us more, Amy.
Thank you to Ann Martin who's passing out a couple of things. My name is Amy Billingsley. I'm one of the consultants with the History Makers, which is a group out of Chicago. Thank you, Sue Klein, for inviting me, and I'm honored to be in the midst of so many distinguished ladies. You know, I was looking at this. If you substitute African American for feminist, you've got our story pretty much, because we share information, and you know, we need our contribution to fight for African American rights and empowerment the same as women. We have a similar cause made all the more reachable nowadays, as she said, by all the new technology that's available. When my mother was born in 1910, women couldn't vote. You know that. Women were considered the property of their fathers and husbands. We've come a long way, baby.
In America.
In America.
Not in the world.
Yeah, around the world, yeah. There's an African proverb that says, until the lions tell their own story, tales of hunting will always glorify the hunter. The History Makers was founded to address the lack of documentation and preservation of African American historical record. Prior to the start of these interviews in 2000, there was only one large-scale methodical attempt during the 20th century to capture African American history from a first-person perspective. That was the WPA slave narratives that are now in the Library of Congress. Nearly a century after African American achievements and struggles had gone undocumented until 1999, the time of our founding. The History Makers was born of Juliana Richardson, the executive director and the founder. Her dream to address this problem by capturing one person at a time the untold personal stories of both well-known and unsung African Americans, and by creating a priceless video collection giving those involved their special place in history. These testimonies captured by the History Makers collection, conducted in homes and offices across the United States, reveal the broad scope of narratives of African American men and women who have made significant contributions to American life, history, and culture during 19th, 20th, and 21st century. Many of these contributions have been largely untold and unrecorded. They are America's missing stories. Over nearly 2 decades, History Makers have assembled a collection of over 3,000 interviews, 10,000 hours of first-person testimony to educate the world about African American life, history, and culture. The History Makers is a particularly important treasure trove of insights, career paths, role models, and perspectives. These stories, now and well into the future, will provide a more complete understanding of who we are as Americans, as well as where we've come from and where we're going as a nation. An integral part of the American experience, the History Maker stories are stories of success against the odds, of achievement in the face of adversity, and of inspiration. I hope you will explore the History Makers digital archive, which is online and easily accessible. The archive is an easy-to-use database of thousands of African Americans from a broad range of backgrounds and experiences. Unlike other primary resources, the History Maker archive provides high-quality video content, fully searchable transcripts, and unique content from individuals whose life stories would be lost if it weren't for the History Makers. Trying to expand the accessibility of this knowledge, the History Makers has contracted with over 100 colleges, universities, public libraries to make the information easily available. In fact, for $30 a month or $300 a year, you can support the History Makers and access our digital archive from office or home. That's a deal you can't beat. If I can, I'll try to show you a bit of our archive. They're divided up into 15 categories: education makers, religion makers, and so forth. So let's see if we can look at Dorothy Height. for each one of these, there's a short biography, and then there's video. There's a video. Yeah, can you hear it?
Harlem was alive with art and creativity, and some of it was popular art, and some of it was fine art.
There's the
who were some of the
transcript.
musicians?
Well, of course, there was Duke Ellington, Cy Oliver, Cat Halloway. For a while, I lived next door to the Mills Brothers, and Rosina Horan, Count Basie. The interesting thing is that at that time, many of the musicians had little work. They would work downtown, and then come to Harlem. There was a restaurant on 7th Avenue where sometimes they would be helping and waiting tables and singing with Rigoletto. And, you know, it was remarkable kind of experience. It was also a time when Langston Hughes and Connie Helen and John Gillens and all that were very much part of life, and Paul Robeson, of course. So, and I worked with Paul Robeson on what do you call it, housing coordinating committee, because he was trying to do more about housing for the poor, as well as doing his singing. So it's
That's just one example of some of the hundreds, thousands of stories that are on the website, which is available to you. One of the unique aspects of these archives that I think is especially important to researchers is you can enter a search term, and you can see all the references to that term. For example, race riot, grandmother, television. To me, the neat thing is you can put in a term. For example, you can put in race riot of 1919. And everybody who mentioned that would come up and tell you, you know, what they said about it. You could mention Julius Hobson, which I wish we could find. I'm sure there are people that have been influenced by Julius Hobson. You can put in the Washington Post, for example, and that would come up.
One of the things I've noticed lately, if you notice in the obituaries, they are putting in mainly African Americans who never got an obituary in the newspaper, and they are highlighting them on the obituary page with a bio of someone who died 40 years ago, 50 years ago, who were never mentioned because they were African American, never had an obituary. So they're posting that now, which is a very nice tribute. A little late, but better now than not.
And women too. They're doing women's obituaries too.
It's the New York Times.
Yeah.
I did do an interview with Dorothy Heights at the 175th anniversary of the Oblate Sisters.
Okay.
So I've got that footage if you're interested in
She
it.
tells wonderful stories, doesn't
Yeah,
she?
yeah.
Okay, well,
Is there a way to take something like that and connect it and just connect it into your archive?
I remember the name.
I don't know.
Well, all my stuff is on YouTube. If we went on YouTube and put Emmett Till right now, you'd see the 2 half-hour shows I did on him.
And there's a similar thing with this digital
Right,
archive.
I know what it is. I've been trying to get them to see that that's the YouTube channel I have, that you can do that, go in, and any name you put in, the thing will pop up.
So maybe we can entertain the Q&A now,
Okay, that's
starting with you. And will the other speakers come up and stand along here? So if you have a question for any of the 3 speakers, let us thank them all for the marvelous presentation. Thank you, yes.
This is not a question. I don't want to miss the opportunity. This is a book written by a historian from Clemson, maybe, Megan Taylor Shockley, about what feminism did in the Commonwealth of Virginia to forward progressive ideas and values. It deals with domestic violence, ERA, and reproductive rights She does make some mistakes, unfortunately, which I happen to know because they're recent mistakes. But there are people in here who I know who are alive and kicking today. It's wonderful.
Could you say the name one more time and the author?
Of the writer,
The whole thing, the book, the name.
let me give it to you, Holly. Creating a progressive Commonwealth, women activists, feminism, and the politics of social change in Virginia, 1970s to 200s. And there's all sorts of information in the back. Okay, here, I got it from the library, but.
If anybody needs my card because you're really moved to want to
Yes.
do an interview,
Except I really object to your making it 82.
Question.
1982, not age 82.
I thought it was age 82.
Oh, no, I did
Excuse me.
one of the best interviews on there is a 96-year-old woman from New York, from Queens, who goes to work every day. She calls her Lyft on her
Yeah.
phone. So there.
Your VFA.
Let me have one.
Virginia now
Well, I have
also has
that.
an oral history of feminists.
Yes, we just featured it on our website. Please start to look at veteranfeministsofamerica.org. And we're also on Facebook. We just featured the Virginia, we're doing collections as well as individuals. So yes, I forgot to say that in my presentation. During Women's History Month, we're featuring history makers. You're the Virginia one and a bunch of other. There's a lot going on in the field already, but I don't think anybody's doing exactly what we're doing, and nobody's paying. And that's my mission: is that you, individual people sitting at this table who made a contribution, I want your story. Anybody else need a card?
I'll stand up there.
Over this way.
Do you have a question for any of the speakers?
Pass a couple cards back down this way, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, one of my suggestions is find a partner and do a video
Yes.
interview with the partner. But read the materials first
Yes.
and prepare. I just watched a couple of your veteran feminist ones with people that I knew and
Right.
that I worked with, and it was so exciting
Yes.
to do that, and it refreshed my memory because as they talked about what they were doing,
Right.
was more in depth. For example, I watched Holly Knox's
Yes.
video the other night. She did a very nice professional looking video
Yes, she
and explained a lot of her background and history in Title IX that really complemented what we've been hearing and knowing about Bunny Sandler's history with Title IX.
Right.
So it's just a wonderful way to really get more in depth.
What is the criteria for being interviewed?
Having been active in the women's movement between 1966 and 1982, period. And being alive, right, that's it, that's it. I mean, actually, being alive isn't even a requirement, because we decided we were missing too many people who were already gone. The other thing I failed to mention is that when we do your interview, we'll put your interview up with the transcribe, and we will link to anything you tell us we should link to. We will look for articles in the paper, other interviews you've done, and we'll put them all into your, and you'll have a page on the VFA website that'll be your page. And then people can come and look for stuff and find, and you can tell us. You know, I did an interview with the Chicago Tribune in 1970, and here's how to get to it. Boom, it's on. It's going to be linked to, so.
Could you tell us how those dates were chosen, 66 and 82?
66 is the founding of NOW, I think that's part of it. And then we were trying to be, it's arbitrary, of course, and it's the second, what we're sort of defining as the second wave. We used to say 66 to 75. I argued that we should go to 82 because there were so many people who were active in the ERA campaign. So that's the arbitrary end of the other end is 1982, the end of the ratification period.
You don't think so? You think it goes now? Keep it going.
Well, no, but I mean, and I actually am talking to women in their 40s about getting the third wave or whatever the heck the next group is called, to get another, I'm actually talking to somebody to get another project started to do that, because I did an interview at the Schlesinger Library 20 years ago, if I did that interview today, I wouldn't remember half of what I said 20 years ago. So there needs to be more done, more and more and more done. And getting people when they're in their most active period can be extremely helpful. So there's a series of interviews at the Schlesinger Library that Mary Jean Tully paid for the grant. And there's like 20, and that Hernandez is in there, and Karen DeCrow is in there, and Ellie Smeal, and myself, and a few other people. So
maybe also what people can do for veteran feminists is do the time period of the second wave,
right,
plus do an additional video that
right.
can get ready for
The next
more
set.
modern
Well, I
time.
mean that's a very good clarifying point, because I was active in the period that we're using, but I also was active for many years after. So when I haven't done my interview, but when I do it, I will do it from the time I got involved in now through the end of my career, and I'm still active, so I'll just keep talking.
Thank you.
But so people who were active in that period, it doesn't exclude if you dropped out, if you didn't drop out, it's when you started.
Any questions for our other speakers?
Just a big thank you.
Here, Sue, do you want to tell us